Hi there, it's Catherine, your lawyer friend and guide, and this is the #1 podcast for legal careers in Japan. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Lawyer on Air. I'm so glad you're tuning into this episode because today's guest is going to shift how you think about visibility and why it's not just about being seen, but about being available to help, rather than being hidden in an ivory tower. Now, I want to get a little bit personal here. There was a time when I was told, don't be so visible. Why don't you take up less air? Yeah, less air. And I've learned though since then, and maybe you have too, that air is free and there's plenty of it to go around. We don't suffocate by sharing our space. So I stopped announcing, stopped explaining, stopped asking for permission, and let the results speak for themselves. Because here's the truth, real power often moves in silence. And by the time people see it, well, it's already done. And that's exactly the energy that Olga Belosludova brings to this episode. She's the first Russian woman to pass the Japanese bar. Wow, the toughest legal exam in the world. She's also admitted to 2 other jurisdictions. In this conversation, Olga shares her blueprint for visibility, what it looks like when it's anchored in purpose, to share resources, not self-promote. Visibility is part of service and to be accessible and trusted. It's a total mindset shift. And for the first time in a while, we're also diving into wellness and burnout prevention. Olga opens up on how she juggles high-performance lawyering and motherhood and the rituals she has built to stay grounded. So get ready to hear all about grit, strategy, and staying seen without burning out. Let's get into it. Hello, Olga, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Catherine.
So good to have you here. We have met before and gone through your whole story, and it was so fantastic. I wanted to have you on this show. But let's start with the first question, which I ask everybody, which is, imagine we are again meeting up in person. Where are we, and what are you choosing from the beverage menu?
I'm actually a Starbucks fan. So I would prefer going to Starbucks Japan. And of course, like you can find Starbucks in the US and in many other countries, but I think the experience that you get in Japanese Starbucks is really great, incredible. The staff are incredible, attentive, and I would order seasonal drink.
So what's the seasonal drink now? We're recording this in June. So do you know what the seasonal drink is for this month?
So like it's really interesting that in the US they also offer like seasonal drinks, but in Japan like the variety and the creativity of the seasonal drink is quite different. So I think this month they are offering mango featured
Ooh,
drinks. Yes.
right. Mango, that's not mango with coffee, right? That's mango by itself, I hope.
Mango with coffee. I don't think Starbucks
Mm,
has been like creative enough to create
no,
that type of
but it
drink.
could be a latte, like a mango latte, a frothy sort of thing. I might have to pop in and see what's going on there. Thank
Yes,
you
yes.
so much. I can join you certainly at Starbucks. I may or may not have a mango, whatever it is, but my go-to, probably if I'm sitting in Starbucks, is a chai latte with fat-free milk. Yeah.
That's also a good choice.
Yeah. Well, your career is amazing, but I'm going to go back to even your childhood, which is also amazing because from the start, you came to Japan aged 2 years old. Can you tell me a bit about that background, how that came to be in those early years of growing up here in Japan and what shaped your connection to this country?
Of course. So I was born in Russia, Siberia, a very cold place to live in. And when I was very young, at the age of 2, a Japanese professor from a Japanese university was visiting my city and where my family was living. And at that time, my father was a student. He met this professor, and that professor surprisingly asked my father whether he wants to do his PhD in a Japanese university. My father said yes.
Right.
And yeah, and my entire family just moved to Japan with him, and we just never went back.
Amazing. I mean, to come here and do your PhD is one thing, but to continue staying is another thing. What led
Yes.
him to say yes to keep going? Have you ever asked your father this?
I actually never asked him why, but I'm really grateful for the decision that he made because obviously at that moment, if he had said no, I would never be like living here in Japan or like became like a Japanese lawyer to
That's
begin with.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that. But I know for you, you've got a sibling, and there was a bit of competition for you to choose law. So tell me about that competition with your, I think it was your brother, and where it was that you decided after, I guess, having school here in Japan, choosing law as your profession.
I have an older brother who is 3 years older than me. And when he started going to elementary school, he started talking with his friends. At home, he started watching like TV programs. And he all of a sudden started telling me that, oh, Olga, I want to become an attorney. And I'm like, okay, my older brother wants to become an attorney. I was super competitive at that time. I'm like, if my brother will gonna be an attorney, I need to be one as well and be a better attorney than him.
Whoa.
I need to outbeat him was like my initial like motivation to like start thinking my dream being an attorney.
But you're quite young at that time, right? How old are you there when he's saying that to you?
I think I was in first, second grade of the elementary school.
And how old is that?
I think in Japan it's like 6, 7 years old.
So at 6 or 7 years of old, you're planning to beat your brother and get to be a better attorney than him.
Yeah,
Amazing.
but he was telling that I want to become an attorney, but obviously I was saying I want to become one too, but I don't think I had like a really clear vision of
Yeah.
what an attorney is. Just parroting what he was saying, yeah.
Oh, so when did that then turn into a reality?
So when I first enrolled in university, the university that I enrolled in offered so many classes that were led by practitioners, like such as attorneys, judges, prosecutors. And in those classes, I for the first time met a real attorney in person.
Right.
And he was like really persuasive, like talking about the topic that he was supposed to discuss during that lecture. And when he talked, like you could see that the audience was moved by what he was saying. And I was like, oh, I want to become like him. I want to like influence other people and make a movement and change the society.
What kind of things was he saying that were moving for you, do you think? Can you remember back then? For everybody else, you can't speak for them, but what got you passionate about what he was saying?
I think the most influencing thing he was telling is the law itself is like really complex. And he was talking about constitution law, that the current society, the election in Japan is somewhat unconstitutional. And for a first year college student, or like even anyone like hearing something on that topic would initially stumble, like, what do you mean by that? And it's really a complex topic, but like the way he expressed
Mm.
and delivered the message, he simplified everything in a way that even a person like myself at that time could digest that
Wow.
really difficult topic. And I think that made him like a really persuasive
Ah, I
person.
see. Is he still around? Are you still in touch?
Yes, yes, he is still around. He actually runs a bar prep school here in Japan. So
Wow.
he still has that presence.
Well, thanks to him for being incredibly inspiring to you and for you, for the path that you've also taken. Obviously, you've done things yourself, but to have someone like that who's really almost like a role model or a well, as you say, an inspiring person, an influencer to get you through to where you are now. It's one part of the puzzle. And your most incredible story is, when I heard it, I thought I have to speak with Olga. What is this? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you are the only foreign woman in Japan to have passed the Japanese bar exam.
Yes, so in a way, yes, but there are like a couple of foreign women who passed the Japanese bar if we include like Asian countries like China, Korea. But in terms of Russia, I am the very first. And as far as I know, the only Russian woman who passed the Japanese bar as of today.
As of today. And I honestly, how do you even begin to imagine that you could do that? Studying, and I don't mean this accusationally, I mean, how could you actually do this? Like, where did that thought come from? Because, studying law is one thing, but taking the bar in Japanese, where very few Japanese even pass it. I'm so astounded and still astounded to know this about you. So take us through that.
So obviously I don't want to go down that road again and like sit for the bar again, but I can talk about like how my journey went at
Yes,
that time.
please.
So basically when I saw that attorney in the university classroom, he was really persuasive. And when I met him the next day, I actually began studying for the bar. I was like so impressed by how he was talking that I
Really?
thought that I really need to start my plan as soon as possible.
Wow. That's
And when
that's amazing, right? That he talked like that and that inspired you to take the step that you did to study the bar. What were the first things that you did? Did you get books about this bar, the six laws of Japan, or what did you do to start studying?
So I did start gathering the textbooks. I started gathering information about prep schools, the one that he has established, for
Yes.
example.
Yes.
So I did start looking into that information, and then I started like reading those textbooks, doing the practice exams, and try to cram myself as much as possible with the information that are gonna be asked during the exam.
And what year of law school are you in when you start to do this?
So I enrolled in law school in 2017, but actually I started preparing for the bar exam even before that.
Oh,
Yes, I started when I was a first year
first
college student.
first year college student. Oh my goodness. Did you have people help you along the way? Did you have some Japanese lawyers give you coaching, or did you really just fight through it yourself?
So I did get some coaching from the attorneys that I knew, but it was like really interesting that when I told the people that I want to sit for the Japanese bar, a lot of people would try to like talk me out of it, like saying it's like impossible. But obviously, I tried to surround myself with the people who said positive things.
Yes, I guess those people who tried to talk you out of it are now eating their words. But surrounding yourself with positive people are very, very important to do what you want. But there's so many people who will be, kind of take the risk on themselves that they would never do it. But, there you were prepared to do that. And there's probably a risk that you may not pass, but you were just so ready to go for it. Tell us more then. What happened?
So I did start preparing for the bar. Obviously, mentally and emotionally, it was really, really tough.
Yes.
Just like to give a little background on what kind of people can sit for the bar in Japan to begin with. So in Japan, we have two paths to sit for the bar. One is to go to law school and sit for the bar, and the other is to pass an exam called Yobi exam. Like a literal translation would be a preliminary bar exam.
Yes.
In a way, like this is like a grade skipping exam that allows you to sit for the bar without going to law school. So if you pass this exam, you don't need to go to law school. You just directly sit for the bar. And if you pass, you can qualify to become an attorney.
Mm.
So So I tried to become an attorney and did become an attorney through this Yobi exam route. And that Yobi exam route, the passing rate is extremely low.
Right.
It's like 4%.
Yes.
So this exam is considered to be one of the most difficult national exam to pass in Japan. Like even the Japanese bar, the passing grade like ranges from like 20% to 40%. So you can see how difficult the Yobi exam is with those 4% passing grade.
Absolutely.
But I really, really wanted to become an attorney even a day earlier. So I didn't want to like waste my time like years and years like going to school. So I thought that I need to sit for this Yobi exam and
Yeah.
just get it done.
And what happened?
So like in those exams, I was actually like really surprised with that Yobi exam. I think a lot of people listening to this podcast and you, Catherine, also have taken a lot of exams in your life.
Mm.
But this Yobi exam, when you go to the exam center, for example, you really feel the pressure that a lot of people really, really want to pass that exam. And when I went, for example, to the women's room during the breaks, some candidates were like even throwing up
Oh dear.
in the bathroom because they couldn't like handle that stress.
Whoa.
With that, like the passing rate is 4%, but I really, really need to get the best score and try to pass it this year. And I think it's tough for everyone. And I've never seen an exam center being in that atmosphere.
Right. It's like the four walls are going to just burst.
Yes.
So what happened? Keep going.
So initially, I was also like overwhelmed with the pressure because um, being in that exam center, it's really hard not to be overwhelmed, I would say.
Mm.
So to try to like lower the pressure, I just started to study more to
Hmm.
begin with. I think a lot of people like ask me like, what's the secret sauce to pass the Japanese bar? What's the secret sauce to pass the Yobi exam? I don't
Mm.
think there's like a secret sauce. Like you just need to like study, memorize hundreds and thousands of pages of legal textbooks so that if I'm like asked a basic question, for example, I can answer like a machine, I would say. So without going through the process, what was that? I kind of remember like you just need to be like a machine that like if you are asked a question, you just throw back a response like in a second. So you need to memorize things to that stage. And that's what I did.
Whoa. Okay. I don't know if that's a secret sauce, but it's an incredibly important ingredient, that's for sure.
Yes.
So what happened next?
But like once you get to that stage, when you go to the exam center, you really feel comfortable that if they throw at me a question that I don't know, obviously the other candidates sitting in that exam center won't know the
Whoa.
answer as well. So I'm confident that if I can't answer it, that's totally fine. I just need to get the basic questions right. And with those like difficult questions, I can maybe guess
Yeah.
based on the basic knowledge that I have. But like I got the confidence that I need and ultimately passed the exam.
Whoa. How long after sitting the exam and hearing about passing, how much time takes place?
The exam is divided into three parts.
Right.
First, it's multiple questions. After you sit for the multiple questions, and within a couple of weeks, you get the results out. And
Mm.
if you pass the multiple exam, then you go to the next stage where it's an essay exam.
Right.
And after you finish the essay exam, you wait for 3, 4 months, and then you get the results. And if you pass, you go to an oral exam
Right.
where you see the examiner sit in front of you and you have to respond to their questions based on the case that they present you on that day in that room. So you just
Um,
read the question, the case, and then they start to ask like 20, 30 questions, and you need to like respond to them as quickly as possible because you only have 30 minutes of allocated time for
Whoa.
your interview or exam, I would say.
Right.
And you need to go through those questions, as many questions as possible in that list.
Right.
The last part is you get the results in like in
Whoa.
a couple of weeks.
How did you feel when you got it though?
That was the most exciting part.
Yeah. I mean, your family, you must have celebrated and oh, it must have been actually just so amazing. And after that though, what happened? Did you join a law firm? Or what did you do when you had that amazing piece of paper and certificate that you could proudly hold? What did you do next?
So when I passed the Japanese bar in Japan, technically you cannot register as an attorney like on day one. You have to go through a legal apprenticeship.
Mm.
So going to courts, going to prosecutor's office, going to law firms. So basically for a year I did the legal apprenticeship and then I joined the law firm that I work at right now.
Right. What was the reaction from others back then when you're showing up as this apprentice doing the apprenticeship? What did peers, professors, friends, people in the courtroom, judges, what did they react like?
The judges were and prosecutors were like initially surprised, but when I explained, they understood. That was totally fine. But the most part that I struggled was with the guards in
Ah,
the court. In Japan, when we enter the court building itself,
yes,
there are two entrances.
yes,
One is the general entrance, and the other entrance is for attorneys, judges, prosecutors,
yes,
so people who are in legal profession.
yeah.
The legal apprentices can go through the door that is for legal professions.
So they presumed you were in the wrong entrance because
Yeah,
of
so
how
when I
you
got
looked?
yeah, so when I try to enter that entrance, they're like, I think you need to go to the general entrance. So I always had to show my badge
Right, yeah,
or like an ID card to
yes.
explain myself that, hey,
Mm.
actually, I'm a legal apprentice.
Wow. How about these days? Has much changed? What's the reaction supposedly by those guys if you're in the court or your clients and other counterparts when they learn that you're a Japan qualified Bengoshi? Do you enjoy that surprise too? Do you enjoy sometimes surprising these people that you are, not only qualified in Japan, but also in two other states in America as well? Let's just add that in there. How is it now these days?
So, of course, still a lot of people are surprised when they hear about my background, and I do like surprising people. So, in a way, like I'm a bit worried that now that I had a chance to introduce myself at this podcast, less people will be surprised to hear my background.
Maybe, but then they're curious to hear more, I would say. What
Yeah.
about these assumptions that people make, though, that they don't know who you are, what you've done? What's it taught you? Because I don't imagine people really think, perhaps even that you're a lawyer or that you're let alone qualified in Japan, or that you're fluent in reading and writing Japanese and legal documents in Japanese. What has it taught you then to think about when you're interacting with people who won't know? I love that you surprise them or that you shock them, perhaps, but is there another approach that you do as well with these assumptions? Do you get in the front end of it as well and head up the conversation like that to tell them who you are? Or what do you do in most occasions?
So a lot of the time, the conversation about my background is initiated not from myself, but from the counterparts that I talk with, the clients, the people I meet. They are really curious to know me, so they just throw a bunch of questions at me.
Yes.
So I just answer all those questions as much as possible in the limited time. And I think after like a couple of questions, they get who I am.
Right.
But obviously, it's really tough, like explaining myself each time I go into a meeting room or like a courtroom. So I changed my strategy in that I try to write a lot of articles these days, even like
Mm.
about myself, especially
Mm.
when I was a first year, second year associate. I think I wrote like 10,
Yes.
15 like articles, and some were like an interview format. So I just put myself out there in the social media and like newspapers and things like that, so people would know me
Okay.
in advance.
That's good. Yeah, letting people know about you in advance. Is there something perhaps within Japan working here, maybe culturally or some legal nuance that you think maybe foreign lawyers sort of underestimate?
Yes, I think there is a lot I can talk on this topic. But if I am to limit my response to one, I
Hmm.
think too many foreign lawyers think that Japanese people speak English fluently.
Hmm.
For example, when doing internal investigations for an international company that does business in Japan, sometimes we have to interview Japanese employees. And a lot of the foreign lawyers think that conducting an interview without any translator in English is possible and
Right.
would be the most effective way. Still, some foreign attorneys think like that. Or like
Hmm.
when actually they go into that interview room, they figure out, oh, not all Japanese people speak English to the level that they feel comfortable expressing their thoughts clearly in
Yeah.
that meeting room.
Yeah.
And it's like really interesting that even the Japanese people who speak English and they can express themselves in English, when you talk to them in Japanese, the amount of information you can actually get from the employees is quite different. Like in Japanese, they are more open and they tend to share more information.
So true. I mean, bingo on that one because they open up. They're in their natural language. Of course, they feel comfortable and they will answer a whole lot more. I found that too, doing
Mhm.
investigations and doing interviews of Japanese people. It's always the way. That's great. Is there anything else you wanted to add here?
I would say that maybe like hearing the importance of speaking Japanese when talking with Japanese people. Maybe some foreign attorneys hearing this podcast might think, oh, I don't speak Japanese. What should I do?
Right.
Should
Good.
I like
Good.
stay away from the
Yeah.
Japan market?
Yeah. What would you say?
Of course, like if you as an attorney speak Japanese yourself, that is best. But if you don't, I think it is very important to coordinate with another attorney in your firm, if possible, that does speak Japanese. And if possible, try to not use external translator.
Why is that?
At least I personally do not recommend using any external translators because it might be cheaper to use them. But if a person who's translating doesn't understand the context that they're translating, a lot of the times the conversation just gets lost in translation. Did you ever like
I
experience
did.
that? Like you think that you
Yeah.
ask the question, but you
Yeah.
get like a quite different response, and you're like, what's
Something missed there.
yes,
Something,
yes.
yeah. And I'd rather the translator verify, did you mean this or what did you mean by that? Could you say that question again? That's better for a translator to do that than to just say what they think. And maybe that's where some of the fudginess comes in.
Yes, yes.
Mm,
A person who's translating the conversation should have a background of that conversation and understand the context so the translation goes as seamless as possible, or else like you're gonna be sitting in a room with a
yeah.
translator and wasting your time getting information
And
that you don't need and you
critical
cannot
point could
get the
be
information
missed.
you need.
Yeah,
Yes.
the information may not be gathered and a critical point missed. Very good. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I am in this season 10 asking my guests to share their responses to several signature questions. So each guest chooses a question or two that they would like to answer from the signature menu that I've provided. And you chose two questions. So, shall we do those?
Yes, 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 please.
One is a pivotal moment in your career. So, we know every career has a defining moment. It could be a decision, an event, a challenge that shifts everything. You've already told us about passing the Japanese bar, but is there another moment that was pivotal for you? And what did you learn from it? And how did it shape your career path or your style of leadership?
So the pivotal moment in my life and in my career was meeting my Japanese husband 7 years ago
Ah,
and
really?
marrying him. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm blushing.
I'm blushing for you too.
So marrying him inevitably deepened and my connections to Japan because he's a Japanese national. And that led me to contribute more than ever to make the Japanese society better. That's to begin with, but it's just that my husband is exceptionally smart, much, much smarter than myself. He attended a more prestigious university than I did, also passed the Japanese bar. He's just like super genius. But when I made the decision to go to the US, he was like, Olga, I'm gonna go with you. So he did not hesitate at all and
Mm.
came along with me.
Mm.
And I understand that the society is changing little by little, but in Japan, I still feel that many women still face the reality that having children often means stepping away from their careers, even like temporarily or sometimes permanently. But after the birth of our daughter, so we have a 3-year-old daughter right now, and when we had that daughter, my husband actually, like, even though he could work as an attorney himself, he chose to fully support me.
Mm.
So he is right now a primary caregiver for our daughter. That is the reason why I can actually continue working at a top tier international law firm without compromise.
Mm.
I don't think everybody can make this decision. And I'm really grateful that he made that decision. Like, even though he's a caregiver and puts all his attention to our daughter, like, if I want to talk with him about my career goals, for example, like in long run, what I should do, typically being in a law firm, you get caught in those daily tasks and you can never think about your
Mm.
career, like, or it's at least like really difficult to think about your career in the long run. But he does give like creative solutions and insights, I would say. So I'm really grateful that I met him. And I think without him, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Fantastic. It sounds like we need to interview him
Maybe for the next
sometime.
podcast. Yes.
Special to be a special guest on the show. Wow, amazing. I love that you've shared that story. Thank you very much for doing that. And the other question you chose was a stumble in your career, in your life that has made you stronger. Can you tell me about that?
Of course. So the major challenge came actually at the very start of my career, right after I registered as an attorney. So I registered as a Japanese bengoshi in December 2019. As many people can remember, after a couple of months, COVID-19 began spreading globally.
Mm.
And what should have been an exciting beginning, like, quickly turned into isolation, uncertainty, and shutdowns. Obviously, courts slowed down, the travel was restricted. I couldn't meet with clients in person. I even like started questioning myself, like whether I was contributing anything at all, despite how hard I had worked to become an attorney.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, I think that frustration pushed me to act. I started building a personal website, began sharing legal content online, basically not to promote myself, but to make sure people knew I existed. I
Mm.
also act using social media. I just really wanted to be a resource for those who needed help. And to do so, I first needed the people to know I existed in the first place. So I just put myself out there. And looking back, that difficult start, I think, shaped the kind of lawyer I am today.
Mm.
I think it really taught me that visibility is part of service. And that, of course, being a lawyer is, you should know a lot of things. But it isn't just about what you know, but how accessible and trusted you are when people need you most.
Wow, that is perfect. I've never heard anyone say that before.
But I really think that, like, no matter how smart you are, if people don't know that you exist, like, who will gonna hire you, right?
Yeah, and why are you keeping all of that to inside and not sharing your gift, right? Of
Yes.
knowledge of the way that you can help somebody. Wow. So you produced all these articles and shared content. As you said, it was for others, but in a way, it also helped give you purpose for yourself during this excruciating time that was COVID, where we couldn't do anything. And, we really were restricted. And I mean, Japan was a little less restrictive than perhaps other countries,
Mhm.
but still, it helped you then sort of be known and be able to be of service.
Indeed. I think if I had stayed at home and like have done like nothing, I don't
Yeah.
think I would be a lawyer as I am today, in that being like proactively putting myself out there. Like even like this podcast, I think if I were like
Yeah.
sitting in a room like during the COVID without doing anything, I
Yeah.
don't think I would be like joining this podcast.
No, well, it's interesting you say, because this podcast was birthed during COVID-19 because of the similar reasons you're saying. And that I saw so many of my friends who are lawyers sort of falling back into the wallpaper. But I decided to just go for it and thought, if I can't be able to help people through this very difficult time, what is my worth on this earth? How did I ever think I could be a good lawyer if I didn't help other people through their most excruciating time, right? During this period where people were suffering and couldn't do their business, how can I help them in some way? And so I love that you've brought that out. And I think that's a very important part about lawyering that we forget, that hiding away and studying and doing whatever it is that is not out in the open is really protecting yourself and not offering yourself fully to the people in the community who need you.
Indeed. And I'm actually really surprised that you also had that frustration during COVID, that you need to make
Yes,
some
I
change.
did. I did. And indeed, this is where this podcast came about, by hearing people's stories. And it made me not only be able to share stories, but feel that I was able to do something that mattered. And now, after 4 years, it's really proven itself that it does matter for people to hear stories like yours. And speaking about this, what are your tips then for lawyers who are coming through the world now, who are coming out of law school or deciding whether or not to be a lawyer? Are there tips that you would have for them, and maybe particularly for women, but not necessarily? People who want to come and work in Japan, you mentioned a little bit before, don't be perturbed by, not having language. Is there anything else you'd like to add there for tips for future lawyers?
So I have two tips that I want to highlight today. First, I would say don't let others define what's possible for you. If you have a clear goal, whether it's passing the Japanese bar, building a practice here, or simply gaining experience in Japan, you'll likely hear voices telling you, oh, it's too difficult or unrealistic, like the ones that I experienced. But I learned that such skepticism often says more about others' limitations than your own. So keep your focus and don't be afraid to chart your own path. That's one tip that I would give. And the second tip would be that don't try to do it all alone. Find mentors, build a network within and maybe beyond Japan, and ask for help when you need it. I've benefited from like so many people who supported me along the way. And I hope to do the same for others, especially women who are pursuing a similar path. So if I can be a resource for that, I would do that role as well. So I think that's the two tips that I want to deliver.
Fantastic. Really excellent gold there. How do you find a mentor? Do you ask for one? Do you do something for your mentor that you'd like to work with first and then follow up with a request? How do you approach your mentors?
So with the mentors, I usually try to find a mentor myself. Of course, like sometimes there are companies or like firms that allocate a mentor for you. So you can come to that person and talk about your work-life balance or like the work that you do and like try to figure out a solution. But obviously, it's quite different when somebody comes to you as a mentor or you choose someone as a mentor, I think.
How are they different?
Especially when you choose a mentor, there are a lot of people that you can first approach, and you obviously need to make a decision who I want a mentor to be.
Right.
So you start listing criteria for who you want to choose the mentor to be. For example, like if I want to get more business, obviously I want to be having a mentor that has a lot of business himself or herself. You don't want to have a mentor that doesn't have a business to begin with. Or like if you want like to do international work, you want a mentor to have international background or
Mm,
some sort of experience on like big major international cases. So after that you start listing the criterias, you know like what you really want out of that mentor, and you just start asking questions. They're gonna respond to you. Then you make action plans. You try to do that. If that works well, you go and say everything went successfully. Like, what else can we do? If that didn't go well, try to strategize on what can be fixed. I
mm.
think if you find a mentor yourself, you can be more proactive in establishing your career.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And thank you for your offers to be a resource for people too. And I hope you're not inundated. I don't think you'll have too many people lining up to be doing the Japanese bar, but you never know, you might get one.
Yes, yes, but hopefully that I not hundreds and thousands of people start
No,
calling
not
me from
hundreds and
tomorrow.
thousands. Well, also, as well as the law, you've had a really full life. You mentioned you're a mother. You've also done ballroom dancing to a professional
Mhm.
level in the past, and you've got a new hobby, I believe, which is golf.
Yes.
Yeah, and as well as all of that, you're still managing on the other side your US litigation, your deals here, all this family time. How on earth do you schedule everything and avoid burnout? I can now tell that you are getting a lot of support from your dear husband. But any
Mhm.
other things that you would suggest that we could follow? Maybe I'm going to ask you for tips again around managing all of those different components of your life.
I really wanted to keep this tip a secret,
Ah,
but for this podcast, I think I'm gonna talk about this tip for the first time in
ooh,
public.
ooh, okay.
Yeah, so everybody is lucky, I would say, in
I'm
a way.
holding the space for you. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yes. So one strategy that helps me maintain balance is, I think, setting two goals each year.
Yes.
And I set one goal that is professional and the other goal to be personal goal.
Mm.
So like if you have like two goals, this dual focus keeps me grounded and ensures that I'm growing in more than like just one direction. For example, like in my second year as an associate, my professional goal was to expand my network. And then I broke that down into actionable steps. Okay, I need to publish a set number of articles in Japanese legal journals. Oh, I need to seek opportunities to speak in Japanese media. Oh, maybe I need to try and apply to a US law school to connect with peers internationally. I broke that goal down into actionable steps. and just started ticking off the box, like doing what's on that action list. But at the same time, I also had my personal goal at that time that I wanted to grow my family and have kids, which led me to prioritize starting that chapter of life as well.
Mm. And it's really being very strategic, it sounds like to me, in managing both of those goals. And you've got the big high level two goals that you're focusing on, and then breaking it down into bite size, actionable pieces is helping you get through to do that. And I think, is it just do it, set the goals and get going? And rather than just think, what am I going to do? Actually, just come down to making those goals and moving forward on them.
So I do try to set actionable steps after I set like a really big goal. But I think the most important part is that the goal cannot be one goal. You must have multiple goals, and that goals should be across different areas of life. And that I think really helps me avoid burnouts. And that like even if one area becomes particularly like demanding or uncertain, I still feel a sense of momentum and fulfillment in the other.
Right. Yes, because you said you're growing in more than one direction. So
Yes.
one other branch of the tree starts to grow and have leaves, and the other one might be just in the dark for a little while, but comes
Yes.
back out. I see.
And I think it's also like a reminder that like a success isn't defined in one way. It's dimensional, and that progress in your personal life can fuel your professional energy, and I think it's vice versa as well.
Right. I see. So in doing that, you're balancing in some way, or at least managing those components. And I think too, you're maybe avoiding, as you said, burnout. So you're not having difficulties in both areas, in both professional and personal. You've kind of worked it so that you're pulling the strings or pulling the rope on one or the other, and they're going to balance each other out, and you'll avoid being overworked, over pressured, over exerting yourself. Is that correct?
I think that's correct, especially like to give like another example, like some people, like especially Japanese people, when they sit for the Japanese bar, they put all their effort into passing a Japanese bar. They don't set any other goals.
Right, I
So,
see.
like when they start doing that, obviously it's fine if they pass the bar at the end of the day, but ultimately some people don't pass, right? Like the passing rate is not 100%.
Yeah.
When you don't pass, like if you put all your energy on the one goal, you feel that like a door is shut in front of you. There's nothing else that you can do in the world, and you get really depressed.
Mm,
And sometimes you cannot like focus on other things, or like even vice versa. Like if you pass the bar, you only focused on passing the bar. And
mm,
some people like after passing the bar think like, oh, it's exciting that I passed, but what's next? I
right.
haven't thought of the next steps. So
Mm,
like I really feel that like if you put yourself in like one box, you tend to get to burn out
yes.
easily than having multiple goals set in your life.
Well, thank you for explaining those tips. And I think they're even, not necessarily only for future lawyers, they're for anybody who wants to manage their life, and it can extend beyond lawyers too. But I think what you've said is very informative. Thank you so much. What gives you fulfillment today, though? Because you've passed and done so much, you've passed exams and done so much. You've been named Legal 500 Rising Star in FinTech. You've got so many investigations across different industries under your belt. What is it now that's coming up for you to give you fulfillment in this way?
I think what fulfills me most today is seeing the impact of bridging worlds, whether that's between countries, cultures, or people with different perspectives. When I am able to help a Japanese company feel more confident expanding into the US, for example, or support a foreign client in navigating the nuances of Japanese law or business culture, I feel like I'm doing more than just practicing law. I'm
Mm.
building understanding and unlocking opportunities that I think otherwise might be felt like unreachable for the parties.
Mm. Anything else you wanted to say here before I give you one of my last questions?
I also like mentoring others,
Mm.
especially women and the young professionals who are like navigating paths that might feel unfamiliar for them. So if my journey can help even like one person like believe in what's possible for them, then I feel everything I've pushed through has been worth it. So if anybody wants to like reach out to me like to hear thoughts or like advice on like certain career path, I'm obviously open to do so.
Thank you
I'm
for
just
offering.
reiterating that as
Yeah,
well.
thank you. Because I was going to ask you what one thing it could be that people would take away. And I think you're obviously open for others to contact you. Obviously, don't deluge poor Olga with too much. But if you're genuinely interested and really are able to be a really great mentee, then please do reach out. Thank you for offering that. So, what's it been like being on the show today? What's it mean to you to be a lawyer on air, a woman, and racing through everything in Japan's legal world, breaking barriers, managing your life in the way you are, and inspiring others and helping bridge? What's it meant to you today to be on the show and speak?
This was a really exciting opportunity for me. So, first of all, thank you so much, Catherine, for offering this opportunity to me. This is amazing.
Great. It's my big pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, and for me, I think this show really meant all about visibility. To go
Mm,
back to that word again, so I'm not like doing this for the sake of recognition. Rather, I'm doing it for visibility. When I started, I didn't see many role models who looked like me or shared a background similar to me, and that absence made me a bit lonely when I was establishing my career. And I wasn't like even sure whether I was making the right decisions on the way. So I really feel that now my responsibility is to be visible and to be seen. And if my story can help even one person imagine a future for themselves in Japan's legal world, then I think joining this podcast was worth it.
yay. Thank you. I'm sure
Yes.
it's going to inspire more than you know. So thank you so much, Olga. We have actually reached the end of our chat today. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. It's been a total pleasure speaking with you and connecting in this way again. If people want to connect, you mentioned before getting in touch. Is it better to do it by email through perhaps me, maybe, or is it good to connect with you on LinkedIn?
They can connect through you, Catherine, or they can just send a direct message to me from LinkedIn, whatever works for them.
That's great. Thank you so much. We'll put all of that into the show notes. And to my listeners who are sitting here writing down notes from your speaking. They are looking on LinkedIn already to find out where you are and send you a message. Thank you so much to all of you for listening. And I hope this has inspired you to do some actions. And we would love to hear from you. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can send a review to us in writing. You can even leave a voice message on our website. We have technology. This feedback that you give us always helps others to find this show and discover answers to questions they always wanted to know about a career in law in Japan, but they didn't know where to go. That's all for today. See you back here on the next episode. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now.